The Beth Lejenejalingo be Shana Igle, proud to be a black sheep. T'adawande, t'atlae, da na aljinjit, na elkede, Shandin, nes nade na olkitli, ne nel in. Bekat da astahe, yikage, che, hashtet neta. Nedat the oltkatje, ashklat da aljin yitzi. Shinko, do da oltkat digi, ashklat da aljin be biche olkil. Shinko, do da oltkat go, Shandin biche doba masane, yet nahastka do leligi, t'eya yan se kes. Hajo ba'a go nda, beshti sta, do nda istka. Shandin, beba oltka a deal so do kuntke hida, chidin da abasjin, chelwood. Ade bema, chidiyi, beba satala. Shandin squirmed in her seat and glanced at the clock for the 10th time that minute. It was 5 minutes before school would end, 5 minutes before summer vacation would begin. Oh, how she was looking forward to spending her vacation with her grandparents. At last, the school bell rang. Shandin gave her teacher a hug and then hurried out to the parking lot. Her mother was waiting for her. Shandin chide yi hilwood ado bekat da estahe yikat da nezdago bama abilne. Shandin niel da hietli shla. Shandin bama Shandin bama sane do beche yich binneiki bilbeho zingo ane. Balk edeni da ligish bich tilnele. A caution nekok at the quishi the moale ne Shandin. Ta'acha shamasane do shiche bilna ahis tsehle t'olanan sintle. Shandin bama bichet o ya ni zinko anadet ne. Shandin oltkatge t'asahe t'nenlingo shin ta'ani nangla. Shandin ba naho kadigi beniche yitin selin. Shandin enda hanata iltka ye danche. Enalni. Ida oltkatge t'oni yahago alchine yel adatini iltka igi yiche ateho sin ye yenalni. Shandin yenshia. The Bethlehem inishle. Dinid. Alchine yelta oltka igi t'opa Adani gloko adadinid. Geishant de Bethlehem, Lejenin ligo, Biljat eto lel. Yujit shan geit ehegiet Ado che hadahal chinko. Me danne. Digenal niko, Shandin benitse, altskoyidski. I've got your bags packed, Shandin, said Mother, as Shandin climbed into her seat. Are you looking forward to your visit? I've been looking forward to it for weeks, said Shandin. I just wish I could see Grandma and Grandpa more often. Mother nodded sympathetically. I know it's hard for you, Shandin, being the only Navajo at your school. Shandin's face clouded. She remembered the first day of the school year when she had introduced herself to her new classmates. She had said, I am Shandin of the Blacksheep clan. Her classmates had laughed at her and said, who would want to be a black sheep? What kind of name is that? And then they had taunted her by making mat sounds. Shandin's cheeks burned as she remembered. De nebekeache, hualawalwalko, nizadende, Ado hodina old kid. Shandin oltkate, jida adahot in ye, bama ye yel nahasne ado ilhaj. Ado jena zide athin iglajigi bil what's aswad do hodawalgo hol walgo enda Shandin jena zid. Ado hodina Shandin bamasane dobache behawana maze jilta. Couldn't aj doshe masane doshe che aden hitch e ash. Shandin bamasane belhojongo benashchid. Shitsuin janie netla hi sanigi bahojon ne che doshe nten siglin. Ta nohla ne hitin silin nigo Shandin beche ich na hayago yinashchidgo adiyil tod. Shandin niyado hodinago taske yaka nestje. Jete yago don zadgo o ol kidgo benina. Tod janij il nahalingo nitjishkaj. Shandin bamasane besh bekoin yi na atsigo je bin sid. Jilla yit dan Shandin beya adidin. The trip to the Navajo reservation was long, but the time passed quickly. Shandin told her mother about her last day of school, and then she fell asleep. She didn't wake up until they got off the highway, when the bumpiness of the dirt road jostled her. Soon her grandparents' hogan was in view. "We're here! And Grandma and Grandpa are coming out to meet us." Grandmother reached out to give Shandin a warm hug. "My beautiful granddaughter, it is so good to see you again. Your grandpa and I missed you." "I miss both of you," said Shandin, turning to give her grandfather a hug. Shandin went to bed soon after arriving, as it was late and she was very tired. It seemed she had barely closed her eyes before she was awoken by the sound of grandmother poking the fire in the stove. Rays of morning sunlight shone through the top of the hogan. "Shandin, t'onagalgo, bamasane baakoni zingo abelne. Nitidin naje o old kid. Na ahoge dot city adane. Tilgo ante. Nanes kade, tika zet ego a yonet le kane a shle. When tkehida Shandin bella do beni, tkanesgias ado ntsides koko, tane do nesda. A binigo, da danigi, a yo beltal kango, de yago, Shandin na adel kid. Dat di jeans de be dat nail card. Beche belne, o, a kunde, tlago, na sho a selt e el tedolel. Shandin o ochodes zego, beche, benitjigo, a dolni, do, ade, kelche, njonale, t'ayla be el yago, hayila, do, benala. Kelche, telchi hagan, benago, yada ahigi nahalin gotlachi. Ya shiche ne Shandin. Kelche, tzidat ado kut ego, alako njonigi seta nte. Tzidat ane na ishla, bilne biche. Nidat nil kadgo, ni kelche, bitsin ezgo, na hassan, nihima, bitinil ezigi, ta behojoni yeto lel. Ni kelche, benanago, dot asahe nanna nahalindo lel. "It's time to get up, Shandin," said grandmother, noticing her looking around. "The rooster and all the birds are singing. Hurry up now. I'm making open fire tortillas, your favorite." Shandin quickly washed her face and hands, and then sat on her knees upon the earthen floor. "Are we going to herd sheep today?" she asked, while they ate the delicious breakfast. Grandfather nodded. "Yes, but first I have a surprise for you." Shandin held her breath as grandfather reached behind him and then handed her a beautiful pair of handmade moccasins. The moccasins were the same color as the giant red rocks they lived near. "Oh, Grandpa," breathed Shandin, Those are the most beautiful shoes I have ever seen. I made them especially for you, said Grandfather. They will help you feel connected to Mother Earth, as we herd sheep. When you wear them, you will never feel alone. Shandin ayanda, natnes kadigi, yeneglingo be a. Sho, nail tanigi yisi ya belhojo. Sho de beyaja et do njone gotlejin. Sho chego dog ego do yodesk asgo yische. Sho yische da de beyaja de quishi da nezna. Akonde sho atka cheya. Yische begleto yahahigi bi. Shandin de beyaja. Sho ye. Ajan sheet na halin go de lhillende. Sho baga tsega dini chahal hiel bi big eyas de glat na halin. Shandin t'olta natnes cad do big agent de cuijishi de natnes cad. Bedo sho zel banco do hiugo na nada as teen go and na yigla. Shandin nandkago do da holtsego ya belhonene. Zel banco do tsedako Navajo bel a chodeziel. Ta cuije nandkago do da holtsego chowando hajo nzadgo yits anje da. Shandin enjoyed her first day of herding sheep, especially since she was able to see Frosty again. Frosty was a beautiful black lamb that had been born on a cold winter night. Unlike much of the newborns that did not survive, Frosty made it through that first night and the entire winter. Shandin named the lamb Frosty because, though as dark as charcoal, her wool sparkled like diamonds in the night. Shandin's first day of herding sheep was followed by many others, and she and Frosty created many new paths over the mountainside. Shandin loved exploring and felt entirely at peace both on the mountainside and among the yawning canyon walls. Every day her explorations took her a little bit farther from home. Shandin hawando nizadgo anadasaligi beche yinigo Shandin sho yelnigo hadzi hajo beninglingo be na altihigi nansen shawe akonde kodo achigo tsedako da hast ozaje adonannahe banjit nako Bahadzid ado achotnil tinko ado chodina tkopil hada debi. Shandin dobel hojogo beni da yilchil. Hala bije tsekongo naha and tsekonte lagotse anasazi yikindash ye yidnol il yin ye a component O konaganije, tsekonte, tsebekandash aigi, nanshtrago do, da nesh ingo sha, nigo, shandin, na adel kid. Ne cheisen ne bemasane, tsedako guyado, do eyaje, nigi nanne le, a hot eda. Shandin bemasane, do beche, nigo, Ik hol ido, chenzende. Bis kane, tashe, behodozentli, nizenigi, bik eteskli. Nle tsadako, yego, datilwood. Sho, bike yigloshko. When Grandfather heard of how far Shandin was wandering, he gave her a warning. I want you to enjoy yourself, my child. However, I want you to stay out of the narrow canyons to the west of here. They are dangerous to climb on, and when it rains, they quickly fill with water." Shundeen frowned, as she had planned on going to the canyons that day. There were many petroglyphs on the canyon walls that she wanted to see. "Can't I even spend a little time exploring them?" "Listen to your grandfather," said Grandmother. "Those canyons aren't a place for a little girl to play alone." Shundeen tried to obey her grandparents, but the very next day, her curiosity got the better of her. She set off for the canyons with Frosty. "Éibide osalso del congo, do behal jindo, naho costain go, sig azago niol. Shundeen bil hujon go bejay da naltkal go, te conche go, til go sho, yilanje ilwod. Do ade yilwod go, ntjol go, achot niltka. Hada shi adadetne, yids a. Yego achot de noltkin ligi, yahal neko. Shotke ei, tada achot niltkin he, teko go ya, adadi na do, akoya, ndit nitkal do, huidil tel, ne Shundeen. Akonde sho, tsedato, ta chadeya. Shundeen che de quinshi da aljinje sho yiya, honil inko hodina. Arot ot asahat seko goya de shachnizi. The day was dark and overcast, and a cool wind blew from the north. Shundeen's heart beat with excitement as she hurried toward the canyons with Frosty. Just as she arrived, a light rain began to fall. Distant rumbles of thunder threatened of a further storm. "Come on, Frosty. Let's climb down and explore before the storm comes." However, Frosty backed away from the edge of the canyon. Shundeen coaxed Frosty for a few minutes, but then gave up and decided to go on by herself. "Tseko goyaga ayo nikidahwiti a. Shundeen, tsedadil ko yege, bitch it na wheat nago, che hajoyik ida, ndidil tkal. Akonde, tseko, bitide, say tkache, t'ado et ehego, Shundeen, nikeswo do, tse, beginda ash'a lay, yinel ingo, yandidza. Yego, akwat nil tkande, Shundeen do ya halchita. T'abik eyegi, et ego has ande. Shundeen aids o yabil honeni. Teko bedate sho yo eats ago. Anditni. Shundeen a sho aninigido. Ya nahodilt inko. Te big inda ash'a ye. Ato yinel inje. Inda sho yenalni. Akogonda Shundeen sho yiche. Hadolagaj go anne. Hagoshi sho. Ako hadesh na. The canyon walls were steep, and Shundeen had a difficult time getting a firm footing on the smooth rocks. However, Shundeen made it safely down to the sandy bottom and began examining the petroglyphs covering the walls. Rain began falling heavily, but Shundeen hardly noticed. She was enjoying the thrill of her dangerous situation. Up at the rim of the canyon, Frosty bleated loudly. Shundeen ignored Frosty until she had seen all the petroglyphs. Then she called, "All right, Frosty, I'm coming up." Shundeen a do nahung aige, hadot nake chech kainestra. Akondik at tsekohage, do bahat zidgo, hajo, nekehodi ago, ya konizi. Chet ado, ya pinne yilehe, Shundeen, do deko, neketna. Akondit te yona tket salit late, Shundeen, altkadegazgo, bike, biya hanide. Nile tseko, bitlache, náclij, do ayego bajad atlajigo, ikigo. Da at bitkago nesgego hadilwood. Jehizinko, tonneje náclij. Tsida kogolto, ade tseko, goyatko, jogo desna. Shandin, nastzidgo hadolraj. Ado, tsayitsinje, ha destins. Tro, ado hajon, de atin nes andgo shandin, bikaje ohodolel. Sho, nigo, shandin hadolraj. Sho, shika in lied. Shemasane do shechegandka. Sho, ag iditkan halengo. Yo eats ago, a din need. Ado hawanjago yaltkal. Ajashi, yego nalzidende. Shandin do belyego hazan. Sho dot o shidolneta. Kait ego da shika adolwol. Nzingo bilbehozin. Shandin looked for an easy place to begin her climb, but the canyon wall seemed much steeper now. Trying not to become worried, Shandin began to climb anyway. However, the canyon walls were very slick, and Shandin's feet slipped out from under her. She crashed to the canyon floor, landing hard on one leg. Pain shot through her body. She dropped to the ground, not able to stand. Also at that moment, a slow stream of water began flowing down the canyon. Shandin screamed from fear and pulled herself to safety at the side of the canyon. As long as the water didn't rise too high, she would be safe. "Frosty!" Shandin shouted. "Frosty, help me! Go find Grandma and Grandpa!" Frosty gave a loud bleat, as if she understood, and turned to run home. Though extremely frightened, Shandin was filled with a sense of comfort. She knew that Frosty wouldn't fail her. Nalate Shandin bache doba masane yil eheda hol zinigi yitka hotka ashte hawande nat aj. Shandin do hawange sidaigi do nayolida do yanina do belhaldinda. Chiyan ye hapa ile do lehlint Hodina do inda Shandin yichem benne I asli. Shandin dadze na haltken ye yo iya do ishle nizi bamasane do bache. Tsida kogo Shandin bache do bamasane a go sho bache yilwalko yilta. Sho yo eats go andetni. Tako khashin hodzala hunidzi. Shandin bache ben del glade do etso do klol a hijje. Shandin bamasane be etso yi hia a do belgle la ijje. Do yaltki ego do sho yike I ash. Nle tsako bejinjago atin. Alkida has gizango ye ash. Tsako ye dache ye ashko. Shandin bitne cho impil tintago hahosil tinko ye dista. Shandin t'adon nil ye nigo bamasane do bache deluash. Koden eat ash. Meanwhile, Shandin's grandparents had returned from visiting some friends. They were surprised and displeased to find that Shandin was not at home, as she was supposed to have begun preparing supper. After a while, however, they began to worry. Shandin could have easily gotten lost in the storm. Just then, grandmother and grandfather saw Frosty running towards them from the west. She was bleating loudly. Immediately understanding that something must have gone wrong, Grandfather grabbed a flashlight, jacket, and a rope. Grandmother put on her coat and grabbed a blanket. Neither spoke a word. They followed Frosty along the winding trail that led toward the canyons. When they drew near the rim, they heard Shandine's faint voice crying for help. "Don't worry, Shandine," they shouted. "We're coming." Shandine bache, haben not kalko, tsako, yidako, yigatlins Shandine yilta. Tlol at the yildel do, hajoko bekote, tlol ye Shandine, hayilchan. Shandine bamasane, huntgehda, Shandine, dat itkeze, belglay yik eastke. Ado Shandine bache, beketzin, yinel Ado todazin, ya, la ye hadzi. T'asho yene. Shandine beketzin, t'odes t'odla. Do eig elt kwa daigi, ya he tanizi. Hawangone kako, ch'ilta. Na dil nilne, Shandine bache. Eila elchonez gay. Dinog elko. Choda'e. Grandfather walked along the edge of the canyon until he saw Shandine. He dropped the rope down to her and then carefully hoisted her up. Grandmother quickly covered Shandine's shivering body with a blanket, and Grandfather examined her ankle and said some prayers over her. Thankfully, Shandine's ankle was only badly sprained and not broken. "We'll collect some herbs on our way home," said Grandfather. "There are some that can be used as painkillers." Hawange nakaigo, Shandine, yilseegi yi nadako bamasane baka elwood. Ado chil wehetla baila. Beche chil ze. Shandine beketzin la yaya eila. Also yaya eilago. Shandine beche. Bekat da astahe yi ta nestje do Shandine t'o yenetle. Beche bitle Shandine t'adon hige gwinl ida. T'sekon go t'adon nanahe na din nidne. Had isha benye a queen za. Shandine t'o yago de in. Ba shinnet shiche. Do t'a kushne go ida. T'a do le bohne glingo bande shatlin sin go binina tseko go ya nsaya. Alchine oltkate bil. Da instka igi hanne bida hune glinigi bahashne go. T'a shon. Shida ne glido letlin sin go binina tseko go ya nsaya. Shandine beche, big editka, nahalingo, t'obani yigil yolglo. Ado nilchil, sad, alke ndo niligi, t'oyan sa kes nahalin. Shandine bilne beche, tlago nil, chihunish a. Niginan se da, shimasane do shiche, de betlijine la, yahalnego. Gasta neemt dien billigelt Shandine jogo hasht et nesda. Bena ant o a nilgo. Beche halnego. Ye yeast ango yo billiat When they arrived back home, Grandmother helped Shandine into dry clothes and prepared Navajo tea for her to drink. Grandfather applied the herbs to Shandine's ankle. When he had finished, he leaned back in his chair and eyed Shandine. "Shandine," he said, "you disobeyed us. I told you not to go to the canyons. Why did you?" Shandine dropped her eyes. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I went to the canyons because I wanted to do something exciting. I went because I thought the kids at school might like me better if I had exciting stories to tell them." Grandfather smiled understandingly then closed his eyes and appeared to be choosing his words carefully. Shundeen, he said, let me tell you something. It's a story similar to one my grandparents told me about the black sheep when I was your age. Shundeen sat up straighter, her eyes widening. She loved listening to grandfather's stories. Shamasane do shiche, shilhadne go inne. Ni Shundeen biche. De betlejine, a yo ado lee, yikan ndantka. Ado abit eya, a lako bil ehozintle. De betlejine, a yo nantka, do ado, da dil deko, e benitle. A konde, ado hada nehe, hawande de be ne ish. Ad sho niki de be na kaigi, betskato, de betlejine nle. Biltkadin aj, a konde jinta balako in yahagi ya quinzint Ado le eshil, ne behudi yozi, jinzinigi do ahiya, do betkan zata. Shundeen beche, a chodil ze, ado anaditne. Shundeen, adon ne enlinigi de beljine. Ayo, ado le eshil, ne behi do azil, ninzin, do, ayon sin kes, do, ayon itskep. Dit nilne, ne de shnenigi, be datnt alto, do, ilingo, ne ilya. Be datnt al. Na de, na ntsida kesigi, do, adanninigi benina lago. Adiniligi dota. Ado Shundeen beche, bitlana, achonilne. De net also, ado ne nlinigi, bidish chinedo, badasya. Ado ne nlinigi, al adat ende. Be, ada, a queen zindo, be, dachinot algo, al Dine de betlejining, dan linigi nant ani. Da do letgo be bigida ashchi, ne beche. My grandparents told me that the black sheep is always curious, yet it is also the smartest one in the herd. The black sheep explores and likes going new places, yet it always manages to lead the flock safely home. Now, Frosty is the black sheep of our herd. She goes with you on your adventures, but today she knew you had gone too far. There is a fine line between curiosity and foolishness. Grandfather paused. Shundeen, you are of the Black Sheep clan. You are curious, smart, and strong. You should be proud of who you are, and proud that you have such great gifts. Do not try to change yourself merely for the sake of impressing others. Her grandfather went on to tell her that every Navajo is born of a beautiful clan, and no matter what that clan is called, that person should be proud of who they are. The Black Sheep clan, he said, was marked by people who were leaders. Shundeen beche yinashchid, ikyahat shiche ne Shundeen. De betlejine nishlinigi betat nesht al. Shundeen bamasane. Beltle jo Shundeen yik ineistkit. Kadil khosh betle. Jida hatashi t'andindi nant Hawanna maze biye be atin dine. Ya kulya. Ado nahaltkine a chodil ze. Shundeen nilch il. Yiskago. Shamasane pika adeshwal. Di yoge anide. Diltlol. Di nigo. Binnahuint an yene. Binia aga at ego ndash ango. Billa deshlil. Nigo Shandin ye nihotnia. Shandin gave her grandpa a hug. Thank you, Grandpa. I am proud to be a black sheep. Grandmother pulled the blanket closer over Shandin. Try to sleep now, she said. You've had a long day. The lights in the hogan dimmed, and the sounds from the storm died away. Shandin closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she promised herself, she would help Grandmother dye wool for the new rug the two had planned together.